So it's been a week since Tottenham have drawn to Man United. It feels like a bit more of a loss, if I'm honest, given the circumstances. So very, very belatedly, let's get into Tottenham Hotspur 2, Manchester United 2. So this is how Tottenham Hotspur lined up. If we look into it, against Copenhagen, there was a lot more of a good balance about the team, and a lot of it come from this left-hand side, where you'd have maybe a doggy, well, not maybe, from Copenhagen, you had a doggy and Odegaard on the left. And the reason I think that, so many people were thinking that that was the way that Tottenham were going to line up is because with the left-hand side, obviously you've got Spence here at left back, so when he's getting the ball, more often than not, he's going to want to come inside in here and sort of play into Sarr. And Richarlison isn't really the winger. It's going to go like up and back, and run at players. He's more of someone who's going to sort of want to drift inside. So a lot of the time when Spence has the ball, if you're Man United and you've got that front three of Diallo, Cunha, and Bremo. If Diallo, who's say for argument's sake, starting on the right, we've seen him at right wing back at times. As soon as Spence gets the ball here, realistically, his only options are to go maybe to Van der Ven or Sarr, and maybe Richarlison, but we didn't see it too much. But he can do it, but it's very unlikely that Spence is going to get the ball and drive all the way through the pitch and get us up here. I just don't think that's really what his game is at all. Well, it is to a certain extent. He's very good at beating players 1v1, but when you're at left back as a right footer, you really are sort of neglecting your options going forward, or at least very limiting options going forward. If I'm honest, on the overall sort of performance, I don't think we're good enough to win it at all. I really thought that Man United played very well, and it's a bit of a weird one. And I think they took off, it might have been Mazraoui to put on Sesko, and then obviously Ahmad moved to right back, and then you've got Sesko through the middle. And I thought United really kept us at arm's length, other than a few chances maybe in the first half where Richarlison had the header, and then we come out in the second half, and I think there was a chance where Romero forced a really good save out of Lamans, and so did João Palhinha, and a lot of that come from Wilson Odegaard being on the pitch. And I just want to highlight the sort of game that Wilson Odegaard and obviously Destiny Udogie had, but more importantly Odegaard, and how he really is making that left wing position his own. So with the starting lineup that Spurs put out, one thing that definitely changed from the first half to the second half was the introduction of Wilson Odegaard and Destiny Udogie. So if you look at the team from the first half to the second half, in the first half, a lot of the issues that we were having, obviously Kolo Muani had to come off at half time. I think he's got a broken jaw now, which is great, going into a North London derby with another striker injury, when you've obviously got Solanke out and you've got Richarlison, who, whilst he's not in form, is probably our only available striker, and even his injury record's a little bit patchy. But if we go back to the first half, quite a lot you'd see Simmons sort of back here, sort of winning the ball back here, putting in a good defensive display, and then you get the team up the pitch into this sort of area here, and you'd go with the ball into this sort of area here. And when you'd go forward and we'd move Simmons into this sort of area, there's one particular thing which is highlighted, and I think United might have actually had an attack come from it, is that when Simmons was getting up to the pitch into this sort of area here, I think it might have been Muani or Richarlison, a runner, but he'd get it in this sort of area here, and there'd be absolutely nobody around him, no one around him. And Ali McCoy's mentioned it 3 or 4 times, and a lot of that I think come from just the way we set up. I think tactically Thomas Frank has yet to really sort of take the handbrake off. I still think we're playing with some sort of caution, and that probably is due to the fact that it's a team which probably were quite low in confidence last year before the Europa League win, because let's be honest, every other team was bending us over, home or away, in the Premier League at least. But what you'd get is you'd maybe have sort of Muani in this sort of area, or Richarlison, they both sort of intertwine, and you'd have Muani or Richarlison making that run, and then if you're Simmons and you're looking up, you're thinking, where's the options here? Where's the options here? Moani, I think he's making a run in behind, but even then, this sort of area here, there's no one there. And when you've got, a team which is playing with a defensive midfielder like Casemiro and Fernandes who's playing deeper, plus the 3 centre-backs, Simmons just got completely crowded out. And I just want to show you just how different Spurs were in the second half in comparison to the first half. So now if we look at the changes that Thomas Frank made at half-time, we've got Kolo Muani, who I think he's got a broken jaw now. I mentioned it earlier, but it's a sort of off-the-ball collision with Maguire, no sort of malice at all, but another injury for him, which is not good. Then you've got Spence, who come off at half-time, and I think it was Destiny Udogie might have come... I think Odegaard, it was Odegaard first who come on at half-time, and then Udogie followed. But the difference is that with Wilson Odegaard in the team, yes, we're missing Kudus, so immediately with, Johnson on the right, outside of his natural poaching ability, he hasn't done too much in a Tottenham shirt, and I think he's sort of like that sort of... I don't know if he's got similar goal scoring aspects of Dele Alli, where he didn't get too involved too much in the build-up, but was a lot more of a sort of like poacher in the box and a sort of wide poacher, if that's even a thing. But going back to Odegaard, when the ball comes to someone like Odegaard, the difference that you get from having Udogie and Odegaard is that when Odegaard gets the ball, he's quite happy coming this way, he's quite happy going that way, and even if he wants to drive through the middle here, he's quite happy to do so. And I think that's the sort of thing we get from Mo Kudus on the right hand side, which we've not really had on the left so far. And I feel like Wilson Odegaard's really grown into that role. And in terms of how that gives Spurs like a much better sort of overall balance, when Udogie's got the when Odegaard's got the ball, he knows that if Udogie's going to make this sort of run, like Spence would, that he's quite happy when Udogie gets to this sort of area, he can go that way and take players on. He's quite happy coming inside, or even just making that sort of run there. Whereas I think if you go back to Spence, and when Spence is on the ball, if you take Odegaard out of this one, so when Richarlison was on the ball, we knew that Richarlison, realistically, he's going to want to get into the box. He's not really someone that is going to stretch the pitch, and so quite often than not, when Spence would get the ball, he'd know that more than often than not the out ball would be here, which might maybe go into here if our midfield can get up, but we didn't see that in the first half. But with Odegaard and with Udogie on the left hand side, it just made it so much better to watch, because we've got balance. Because on the right hand side, you know that Johnson really is going to want to get in. With Johnson, you know he's going to want to get into this sort of area, anywhere in the box where he's pretty much been unmarked. And we know that, when it comes to Pedro Porro, he's not really the type which is going to go this way and take players on and get to the byline and then put ball in like that. That is not Pedro Porro's game. I think the area that you want Porro really is more sort of this area, or like around here, sort of corner of the box. We know that you can easily whip a great ball in like that. And we know what we're getting on the right hand side with Porro and Kudus when he's fit, but I feel like we've just not had it with the left hand side. And Udogie and Odegaard, I think, as good as Jed Spence is, it's nothing against Jed Spence. I think it's more down to poor squad planning on Spurs' point of view. Is that when Udogie first came in, he had a great season, got injured around February, March, and then was out. And I think he didn't get injured. He got injured towards the end of the first season. Then he had surgery, and then last year in and out of the team quite a lot. And aside from maybe Ben Davies, you don't really have anyone who can play that left back role. And Davies is sort of similar in profile to Pedro Porro in the way that, like Porro, he's not really, if I just get rid of that one, he's not really, the sort of guy which is going to go and take players on, he's going to want to put that ball in from deep because he's got quality on the ball. And I feel like it's maybe one of them things with Thomas Frank. He's so adaptable. So we've heard at Brentford that you need to have certain profiles in the squad. And I feel like when Spencer's on the right hand side, he offers what a doggy offers on the left hand side. All the things that Porro doesn't do, I feel like Spence does. And then one thing that, if you are to be critical of Destiny Udogie, you'd say that really he's not really that great going forward. He quite often, more than not, will look to get into this sort of area here. And when he's in that sort of area, realistically, we know that the ball's going to go, if I just get this here, the ball's going to go in that sort of area. We've seen it loads under Postecoglou. We've seen it against Brentford, Newcastle, all the sort of salvos where we'd score a few goals quite quickly. A lot of them would come from counter-attacking, Udogie getting forward and then putting that ball across the box. Whereas if you're against a bit more of a stubborn team, having someone who's got a bit more of a similar profile to Porro to be able to put them balls into the box from deep and sort of unlock a really stubborn defence, sort of like we've seen a few times we were trying against Burnley. And I think going forward, Odegaard has got to be in the team. Udogie, if he's fit, has got to be starting. And yes, look, if you're looking at his team, is probably not the first choice when you consider we've got injuries out. But yeah, I think with Odegaard in the team, with Udogie on that left-hand side, both of them as a pairing, they give us so much more balance, and we look like such a more attacking team going forward when we've got both of them in the team. So one thing about making this video sort of late as I have is I feel like a lot of people would have made the points which I was going to, and obviously it's not saying that I'm some sort of oracle. I think it's just I'm showing a natural opinion that a lot of Spurs fans are having. So I just want to highlight Wilson Odegaard's actual stats when he come on against Man United and just the difference that he made for us. So when Wilson Odegaard come on the pitch, these are his stats from Squawka. 100% pass accuracy, 11 out of 11. So it's not like he's doing 2 or 3 passes, safe passes going backwards where realistically they're not going to affect your thing. 100% duels one off the ball, really sort of determined. Maybe that's because we're chasing the game that he was a bit more bullish, but again, it's what you want from a substitute coming on making an immediate impact. 100% take-ons. Now admittedly it was only 2, so it's not like there's absolutely loads that come from it. We've got the 4 crosses, obviously creating danger down that left hand side, and I think that especially was because Amad Diallo had been moved to wing back, and that realistically that's not his position. He can play there, but he's not defensively solid. So bringing Odegaard on just as Amarim brought on Sesko for Mazraoui and moved Amad to right wing back, that really invited Odegaard to run at him, and that's exactly what he done. 100% take-ons completed, 4 crosses, 3 chances created. One of those was the Romero chance, which Lamon saved with his feet. 1 tackle, 1 foul, 1 assist, which I think was probably going in anyway, Richarlison's goal. But really positive from Wilson Odegaard. These are the sorts of stats that we'd expect from someone like Kudus, and for all of this season I've been saying that our right hand side is completely fine. If you've got Porro or Spencer at right back and you've got Kudus on the right, that is completely fine in my eyes. But the left hand side, that's where we've had some problems, and I think we can fix that by having a natural left footer at left back like Destiny Udogie, and maybe in January going to get another left back who's a bit more similar to Porro rather than the likes of Udogie. And then I feel like we've got 2 different options at each wing backs depending on game state, and I think that's really promising. Now one player that we do need to talk about is Richarlison, and yes, it did look like he scored the winner, but he looks like a player which is really short on confidence at the minute. There's a lot of stuff going around after saying about every single time he's took his top off, the goal's either been disallowed or we've conceded straight away. So just want to put out that Richarlison, keep that top on, mate, because it's not going well for Spurs every time you take it off. But overall, I think he was coming into this game obviously off the back of the missed penalty from the Copenhagen game, and a bit of a non-story in him taking it off with Dane Scarlett. Personally, watching it, I would love Dane Scarlett to take it, but maybe the sort of noise is a bit louder because the game was pretty much done, so there's no real need. It wasn't like the game was dependent on that penalty going in, because obviously it didn't go in and we still won. But it's one of them things where, yes, we've seen it before where Maddison has, grabbed the ball to say, I'm taking the penalty, and then he's passed it to Richarlison. If Richarlison done that to Scarlett, wouldn't have a problem at all in terms of him actually taking the penalty. Didn't have a problem at all. Obviously he missed it, so it didn't go well. And I feel like he was going into this game really, really short on confidence. And you've obviously got Kolo Muani who's come into the team. He's started the last few games ahead of Richarlison, so that would indicate that Frank's probably seen Kolo Muani as that starting 9 at the minute. But Richarlison, he's really struggled, and he had a really, really poor game. Second half, he's a bit better when you had Odegaard and Udogie. And naturally, if you're a player like Richarlison who's playing with his back to goal, you want options around you. So the introduction of Tell, who come on, of Odegaard and Udogie, that changed the game. And to be fair to Thomas Frank, you do need to give credit, especially after some of the boos that he was getting when Xavi Simons went off for Tell. But overall, Richarlison, he really, really struggled. And it was ironic that all game, sort of internally, I was screaming at Richarlison, especially with the sort of chances he missed in the first half. And he wasn't able to, look dangerous at all, really, up until the goal. Where, yes, he scored, looked like it was the 3 points were staying at White Hart Lane. And, yeah, and I think he's a player which, if I'm honest, I think a lot of Spurs fans have known that he's probably not going to be the starting number 9 for us. And if you are to maybe have a bit more of an optimistic hat on, you'd say that Richarlison is, if he can stay fit, will be a really good sort of backup striker coming into the team, getting goals in the odd few games every now and then. I think his record's around 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 for us, which isn't great, but obviously you need to take into account that for the first 2 years that he was there, Harry Kane was also there, or the first year he was there, Harry Kane was also there. But yeah, Richarlison, he's really struggling. I think overall in the striker department, we're crying out for Solanke to come back, especially after Kolo Muani's injury. And it just feels like Solanke is a bit more polished than Richarlison, and he's someone which has got a lot of stick for the sort of price tag that you come in for and the goals return. I think he might have got around 16 to 18 goals last year. But if you take into account the fact that he had quite a lot of injuries coming into a new team, which, if we're facing it, was crap in the league last year, he still managed to score against Chelsea at home, Liverpool away, Liverpool at home, Man United in the Cup, Man United away, Bodo, Frankfurt. Really, really, sort of, I think, at least, in the time he was given, I thought he'd done quite a good job. And I think if he can stay fit, Spurs are going to look a lot better going forward with Solanke or Kolo Muani through the middle rather than Richarlison. Another player which did change the game was Matisse Tell, and he's a player which has come in for a lot of criticism so far, particularly the Paris Saint-Germain game, the Doncaster game, where obviously he missed the penalty against Paris Saint-Germain, and then the Doncaster game, it really felt like we were trying, not only to win the game, but to really trying more than anything to get Tell a goal. And he didn't get it in that period, but obviously since then we've seen he scored a banger against Leeds, and he scored a really, really good goal against Man United. There's a few sort of comparisons going around about the finish, some saying that it's very, very, sort of Defoe-esque, and I think it was exactly like that, sort of getting the ball out, one small touch, and then bang, straight away, a quick shot, which, defenders and keepers don't have time to react to. I've seen someone say about the Harry Kane goal scored against Liverpool at Anfield in 2016, the 15-16 season, where a ball came over the top, you drop the shoulder and then just hit it across fast before anyone could react. And I'm not saying that Tell is that player, that he's on that level, but I guess from Thomas Frank's perspective, it must be nice because I thought Xavi Simons was having his best game in a Spurs shirt in the Premier League so far. I just think that, not having Odegaard on the left and Udogie, the sort of impact they made, I felt like he could have maybe had 10 minutes more or 15 minutes more. And obviously I wasn't the only one that felt that way, because when Tell come on for Xavi Simons, there were some loud boos, very loud boos, and especially after it happened only, the week before against Chelsea. I think it was brave of Thomas Frank, and you've got to give him his credit, it did pay off in the end. And whilst I've just spent time talking about Richarlison and Kolo Muani and Solanke and sort of battling it out for that striker position. I don't think Tell is that player where he's going to play through the middle, at least on his own in the Premier League, and be able to hold the ball up, be able to get used to the sort of physicality of the Premier League, adapt to it, and bulk up and really be like a bully of a number 9. I don't think that's ever going to be his game. I think he's probably going to be a little bit more like Son, where he doesn't have a defined position. He's more of a left-hand side through the middle and sort of anywhere in between a winger and a striker, to sort of wide forwards that a lot of kids are probably wanting to grow up and be these days, rather than a number 9. Because you probably see the likes of Salah, Mane of the last few years, and think that's a bit more suited to the sort of player I want to be, rather than a striker. Because I think when you play football when you get older, the sort of glamour of being a striker really, really wears off quickly, especially when you're playing against men who are big and twice your size and that sort of thing. The novelty of playing up front and thinking there's going to be all goals and tap-ins and all that sort of thing, it wears off quickly. And actually, as a striker, it's probably only 20% of your overall game, but it's the most important one, which is why with the sort of issues that we're having at the minute, I don't think it's necessarily down to personnel. I think it's probably how they're being used, and also the sort of tactical setup, which I guess is probably the same thing. But overall, I was really, really impressed with Matisse Tell when he came on. I thought it was probably, if I'm being honest, maybe his best Spurs game that we've seen him so far. But again, there's not been an awful catalogue for us to go through to say that was definitively his best game or to compare it to another game. But overall, I think the way that Tell's reacted since that PSG penalty and the sort of Doncaster game really has been admirable. And I think if we're going to want to compete on a few fronts, obviously can't play in the Champions League, but I definitely think Tell, I won't write him off just yet. I'm not going to say he's going to be an amazing player, but I think he can definitely pop up a few times this season with a few good goals, I think. So there it is. That is, albeit a week late, my thoughts on Manchester United 2, Tottenham 2. Actually, just before we go, one thing that really, really annoyed me, which I don't know how I've not spoke about it so far. How, when you're against 10 men with even the goalkeeper sort of coming up, you've got an extra player for them. Vicario doesn't have to, not that you'd expect him to, but you wouldn't have to mark anybody. So realistically, if you assume that Vicario's not going to mark anyone, because he's a goalkeeper, that's still 10 outfield players against 10 of their players, because obviously Sesko went off injured. And just to leave De Ligt, literally the biggest Man United player outside of Maguire, unmarked at the back post, it was really, really poor. Johnson, very, very bad in terms of staying with his runner, just completely left him. He had a poor game, Johnson. I think that really, really didn't do him any favours. Vicario, he's been on good form recently, made some good saves. Really disappointed with the way he handled that goal. He's pretty much behind the line, when that header come in. And I think you need to ask a bit more of your goalkeeper in that situation. In the same way that, if two players were going forward against one goalkeeper, you have to make sure that you're onside to receive that, else it all becomes redundant. And standing behind the goal, behind the line, where if you do get a hand on it or whatever, just completely becomes redundant. So really, really disappointed with that. It's one where I was really, really angry, which is probably why this is a bit late, because I've had a few days just to settle on it, gather my thoughts and think what sort of educated opinion can I offer from this, rather than just speaking steam coming out my ears, spit coming out my mouth, moaning about us throwing away another game, which, if I'm honest, as a Spurs fan, I'm used to it by now. But that is it. That is my thoughts on our 2-2 draw with Man United. If you are enjoying this and you watch it quite a lot, feel free to subscribe, because there is going to be content coming every single week, albeit this one is maybe a bit late. It's probably not the best one to sort of push that sort of schedule. But one thing that has gone up is the Being Spurs documentary, which I'm very proud of. I spoke to some really, really just wonderful wonderful humans, just in terms of being able to give me their time for no sort of monetary gain, just sort of giving up their time to talk about Tottenham. And the way it's come out, I'm really, really proud of it. And if you're watching this and you've not seen it yet, I would recommend going through the channel and watching the Being Spurs documentary, because it's just something that, you know, no matter how, you know, bad and infuriating Tottenham can be, we're always going to be there. And, you know, it's a real sentimental piece, and I think if you like that sort of thing, definitely check it out. It's something that's going to be up your street. And yeah, next up is Lot after the international break. A little bit more confident it's away from home rather than at home, but yeah, not looking forward to it too much. But yeah, hopefully we'll be coming back after the international break, thinking about the Tottenham win in the North London derby at the Emirates. Is that too much to ask? Probably is, but until then, up Spurs.